Every era has its childhood heroes. From my grandparents, they were Robin Hood, Zorro, and the Shadow. From my mom and dad, they were the Lone Ranger, James Bond, and Captain Kirk. Born in 1970, I had my pick of multiple pantheons to draw from. Exposure to comics, movies, and Saturday morning cartoons provided a wide range of choices, but in my earliest days I skewed conventional. That meant Spider-Man from Marvel and Batman from DC. The reasons are pretty clear in retrospect. At the time, they were the big guns when it came to comic book merchandising. Sure, one could argue that Superman and Wonder Woman were equally iconic, but by '74 their stars had faded a bit. Spidey and Batman, on the other hand, still seemed to be going strong. From the spinner rack to the small screen, the two properties were notably well represented in the media for the time. With the debut of Mego's 8-inch World's Greatest Superheroes line, Spider-Man and Batman received their own action figures, with personalized vehicles and playsets right around the corner. But while Spider-Man had to go it alone in the merchandising department, Batman had some help in the form of his ward and partner Robin the Boy Wonder. This had been a major hook for the Bat mythos since Robin's introduction in Detective Comics 38, April 1940. Robin provided an entry point for younger readers, someone they might identify with in an otherwise strange and often frightening world. This association between the characters was cemented by the wildly popular television show which ran in prime time on the ABC network from 1966 to 1969, and then in syndication for decades after. Parents back then understood you simply didn't have a Batman without a Robin. It just wasn't done. This gave the Caped Crusader quite the boost at the cash register, a boost that remained consistent throughout the 1970s. In the interest of artistic integrity, I am only going to talk about items I actually owned as a child, because what you and I have here, it's worth it. So even as a kid, this Color Forms playset seemed quaint. The monochromatic pieces only emphasized the static background and the out-of-date art. I couldn't have known this was a reissue of a set originally produced in '66. All I knew was that the blobby proportions and oddly posed limbs meant I wouldn't be able to replicate the action I saw on the pages of actual comic books, so what was the point? I'm embarrassed to admit it, but this one ended up at the bottom of my toy box along with the overbaked Shrinky Dinks and empty Silly Putty eggs. Any 1970s kid worth their salt will recognize this next little number. The Duncan Batmobile was a common item in variety and hardware stores. Its hollow body and riveted construction made it a surprisingly solid toy that stood up to hours of outside play. I remember digging deep furrows in the dirt for my Batmobile to leap, or more often tumble into. While the vehicle was almost always black, Duncan switched up the secondary colors, meaning that not only the seats but the figures themselves were often chromatically surprising. A red Batman and a blue Robin. Welcome to the wonderful world of whatever plastic is left in the machine that day. But the fun didn't end there. Duncan also produced a Batboat using the same style construction and figures. Hey, why change what ain't broken? This was a bath time staple in my youngest days. Unfortunately, bath time wasn't all fun and games. Sometimes it could be downright harrowing. Case in point, this container of Batman Crazy Foam. There's no excuse for this. What we're looking at here is the brainchild of some coked-up executive trying to crank out a pitch before heading out to a night of debauchery at Studio 54. I don't want to know why he's cutting out the mouth of Batman comics, but hey, necessity is the mother of invention, from what I understand, and sometimes things can get a little crazy back then. It says so right there on the can. Remco's utility belt. Where to begin? With the obvious, of course. In spite of Remco's dogged insistence that Batman carried a snub-nosed pistol, we kids all knew otherwise. This was hardly the first time that a toy company had armed Batman. Ideal had done the same thing 10 years earlier, but unlike Remco's laughably undersized offering, Ideal gives Batman a freaking hand cannon. I guess when Cesar Romero is coming at you, you want something with a little stopping power. The addition of the bat gun meant all sorts of critical life-saving equipment might actually be absent. No shark repellent. Better hope that pay shooter can stop a great white kid, or you will be doing your crime fighting from a wheelchair. Is it obvious that I'm reading this from a script? The bat rope is no better. It unspools to about 18 inches in length, which means whatever rooftops you are swinging between had better be really close to each other. The bat radio is the coolest looking piece in the set, but in reality it's a piece of hollow shit. For $5 you could have bought 20 comics. Ouch. I saw this clock advertised years before I'd owned it. The $17 price tag put it well beyond my childhood means. I picked mine up at a yard sale my aunt was having. She seemed more than happy to sell it to me and gave me a great deal. I didn't realize why until later. You see, instead of the usual irritating buzz of a normal alarm clock, this feat of Swiss engineering played an actual message from Batman and Robin. Amazing stuff, right? Well, my mom didn't think so. See, for whatever reason, I slept right through this particular alarm, but it woke Mom up immediately. After a few days, the batteries mysteriously vanished, with the clock itself following soon after. Man, I missed that thing. Mego's World's Greatest Superheroes line proved to be a game changer. While G.I. Joe had started the action figure trend, it was Mego's full-court press that slammed them past the net and directly into the plastic plaything mainstream. It's no surprise that the company's introductory offering featured the dynamic duo alongside of Superman and Aquaman. The earliest versions of Batman and Robin were issued with removable masks, but Mego soon phased these out, replacing them with the fully sculpted heads most collectors are familiar with today. The company clearly wasn't paying attention to the grim and gritty detective that Neil Adams was crafting at DC. With his lack of muscle tone and inexplicable smile, it seemed Mego's offering was straight out of the 1950s. It was an odd choice. After all, none of Marvel's characters were smiling. I mean, other than Norman. I must have gone through a dozen of these guys back in the day. Unlike his television incarnation, my Batman didn't always survive the death traps I devised for him. He would get broken, lost, or stolen by the other kids in the neighborhood. And yet, with a little gentle nagging, I could always convince someone to replace him with a shiny new doppelganger. I mean, you just had to have a Batman. And of course, you couldn't have a Batman without a Robin. And Bruce can't slap the kid around, so you're gonna need a Riddler or a Joker figure for them to fight. Mego sold a lot of action figures that way. At least to me. For the old guys who like Old Comics Network, I'm Jason R. Mink. Thanks for watching.